Okay, the next couple of videos are just going to be some little cleanups that we need to do in application. Nothing serious, but a little changes that are really going to help us optimize or stuff like that. So the first thing I want to do is I'll head over to my noti.view and I'm going to change the implementation we have now. It was a very good learning experience, but I don't think it's the best if we want to use it in production. So I'm going to remove the template, and we installed Suite Alert after we already created this component. So I'm just going to get Suite Alert from Suite Alert. Okay, and whenever this notification is triggered or this event is triggered, I'm simply going to say Suite Alert, and the message is going to be payload.message. Therefore, we no longer need our computed properties. We also do not need this data, and our component just boils down to a subscription. So once the component is created, it subscribes to that event, and every time the event is notified or the event is triggered or fired, we have our Suite Alert that displays the message. Okay, so my Laravel mix is running, compiled all the assets. Let me refresh the page, edit the recipe, and if I click on save lesson, we have Suite Alert right here that says lesson updated successfully. If I delete, it says lesson deleted successfully. So we've automatically just switched out our notifications implementation with Suite Alert, which I think is great. Okay, so that's the first thing that we've cleaned up. The next thing I want to clean up is my web.php. In the last lesson for the card update, we actually put it in a closure. So let's just go ahead and create a controller for this. So we can call it update card controller. So php artisan make controller, or actually we can put this in its own method in the profiles controller. So why don't I cut this out, and then I'm going to remove this closure and say it should use the profiles controller at update card method. Okay, so I'll head over to my profiles controller and we'll create the update card method, and I'll paste in what I had from the closure, exactly the same thing. Okay, so for a little validation, we can say this validate the request object, and we'll pass in stripe token is required, like that. Okay, so we've moved that method into our controller, and our web.php looks a little bit cleaner right now. And one more thing I want to clean up is in my profile.blade.php, I want to make sure that only the authenticated user can view this in his profile. So meaning every user can visit another user's profile so far as they know the user's ID or the user's username, right? But the form for updating the user's details, which is this right here, should only be displayed if the authenticated user is the one visiting his profile. So I'm going to say if, and we'll say auth user ID equals user ID, and I'm going to put an if right here, because on this profile we are passing the user, just like in our user's profile right here, our profiles controller. Then we have the authenticated user, so we check to make sure that the auth user is the one viewing his profile, and we can then display the details for the user to update his details like that. Okay, so there we go, and I think that is going to actually clean up a lot of errors. For example, maybe a user visiting another person's profile cannot update it, right? And right in this form, another thing I want to update is the subscriptions for the user. So right down at the bottom, if the user does not have a plan, this is going to give us an error. Okay, so what we could do is actually wrap this in an if statement that says if auth user subscription first, then end if, then we can paste this in like this. Okay, so this is okay, and it's not going to make multiple queries to our database because we are already eager loading the subscriptions for the user. But what we could do is actually save all of this subscription in a variable, and we just simply access it. So I'm just going to put subscription right here, and in my controller right here, when we're passing the user and the series, I'm going to pass with subscription, And right at the top, before the beginning of this block where the user can view his details, I'm gonna say open PHP and close PHP, and subscription is going to be equal to the authenticated user's first subscription. Okay, so right down here we'll check if the user has a subscription, then display this. So rather than all of this, we'll just switch this out to subscription stripe plan. Okay, then we can have an else and then end if, and right here we'll just say span.badge danger, which is just gonna say no plan. Okay, makes sense? This is for our own security, such that the user would be able to see this message if there is no subscription for him. Okay, and we can do exactly the same thing right down here. So if the user doesn't have a card, we don't want to even display this form. Okay, so I'll just cut this out and I'll say if auth user, and for example card brand, which means it's not null, then I can paste this in, and we can do exactly the same check with the link right here. So the link to see the card details, we can say if auth user card brand, and if, then we'll paste that in. Okay, so we would only see the card details pane when the user has a card, and would also see the details to update the card only if the user actually has a card. Make sense? So these are little things that are gonna prevent errors in application, and I think that's pretty good so far. So thank you so much, and see you in the very next video.